Thanks, Emma. So 5 years ago, I was living in Brisbane. It was hot and humid, and the work was great. But then 1 month in, I started to suffer severe acne on my face and on my body. And I had also never experienced being so sick in my life. Sorry. I got an ulcer on my eye, and I had random fevers. And my joints were so stiff that in the mornings I had to hold onto the handrail to walk down the stairs. And then randomly my body started breaking out in hives that appeared all over my joint lines. And I spent thousands of dollars on beauty treatments in an effort to improve my acne. I saw a Chinese herbalist who made me a mix of herbs that my husband said looked like a mix of tar seal, twigs, and cockroaches. I used cortisone on my eye so that I didn't look like I was winking at patients when I was treating them. And I took painkillers just to keep myself at work. And this went on for 6 months. My locum ended, and I ended up moving back to New Zealand. And within 2 months, everything disappeared. The next year, I returned to Brisbane, determined that that was just a phase that my body went through. And in 1 month, everything hit me again. But this time I had to laugh. My body was trying to tell me that I was so unhappy. I hate the heat and the humidity, and I was working far too hard. And I was lucky that on both occasions, the job was for only 6 months, because I had the opportunity to experience that my body could be healthy and happier in a different environment, like New Zealand. I also got a better perspective on what work-life balance looked like for me. I could have easily stayed because the money was great, and I could have saved for a better future. But I would have constantly been trying to suppress what my body was trying to tell me. And if I had to let the fear of change overcome me and stop me from doing something as big as moving countries, I could still be in that same situation. Our body can manifest a wide range of symptoms in an effort to speak to us. And for me, my weak spot was my skin. That was a good one. I'm all about expression, so better out than in. So take a minute to pay attention to how your body feels. Do you feel 100% healthy, that your body is strong, and that your energy levels are high? Or are you feeling exhausted? Are you constantly fighting a head cold, frequent headaches, sore shoulders, or a stiff lower back? Or maybe you're just not recovering from injury. Do you feel like there's not enough time in the day? You're working all the time, your mind is racing, or maybe you dislike your job and you're unhappy in your relationship. And have you ever made the connection that maybe you feel this way, that you're run down because you say yes to everything? Or you have a sore throat because you're not speaking up and standing up for yourself? Sore shoulders because you feel like you have an overwhelming sense of responsibility? A stiff lower back because you don't like your job and you're stressed about your finances? Or maybe you've got hip discomfort because you're a mum that does everything plus more and you don't feel supported. And there's quite a few people that feel like they've been around the block and seen every therapist. They've been through all the tests you can imagine and maybe seen a few specialists, but they leave without a diagnosis and they still have the same issues. Or even worse, they've been told that they should live with their discomfort. And often they know that the discomfort that they experience is more than just a physical issue, and they're desperate to find a solution. These people do get better. So what's missing? This brings me to what I'm really passionate about, the mind-body connection. And some people say that they're not really into this stuff, or it's not for them. But if you have a brain and a body, you can't ignore this connection. Our body is constantly communicating with us to give us information about our environment so that we can adapt. It tells us when we're in danger so that we can run away. It also makes us sleepy when we're sick so that we can stop and recover. And it tells us when we haven't really dealt with stress and trauma and the emotions associated with it. In my early days of practice, I felt limited in what I could offer with just physical treatment. I could tell that people's emotions and their external life was playing a bigger part in how their bodies felt. And it was this that was potentially holding them back from feeling healthy and enjoying their life. So this led me down the path of psychosomatic therapy. It completely changed the way I practice and led to more satisfying results with my patients. And psychosomatic therapy is the understanding that our body is in the physical state it's in as a result of our past emotional experiences, events in our lives, and traumas. And often how we feel or what we think we are capable of is a result of our thoughts, our beliefs, and conditioning. And we can change all of these. In Western society, it's common to get caught up in a busy lifestyle, and soon the work-life balance tips in the favour of work. But we need to make sure that we keep the balance by nurturing ourselves with the things that we love to do. This is different for everybody, but it can range from making sure that you eat healthy food, spending time with your family, going on adventures, achieving a personal goal, but often forgotten, rest and quiet time. Sometimes amongst the busyness, life's little hiccups such as sickness and injury may not be given adequate time to recover. And the emotions associated with relationship breakups or death may not be given a safe space or time to be expressed. Your body is incredibly complex, and it has a whole bunch of internal functions that occur without us having to think. We sometimes hear about the miracles that happen when people recover and heal from illness or injury. But the body has an innate capacity to heal itself if we give it the right conditions. But sometimes we like to question our intelligent bodies and tell it it's wrong. And this is what I refer to as suppression. We're all familiar with the Kiwi saying of harden up or to take a concrete pill. But is this saying doing more harm than good? Often when discomfort arises, it also has an emotional impact. And if it comes at a time when we feel like it's inconvenient to deal with, we find it easier to push it back down and cover it up. And if emotions are suppressed because we don't have time to deal with them, they can be stored in the body as a source of stress. Emma mentioned how breathing patterns can change according to different emotions. Likewise, there is a consistent pattern of where we feel emotions in our body. A study published in 2014 demonstrated this. They gave people words, stories, movies and facial expressions to reflect different emotions and asked them to map out where they felt these sensations in their body. And the results were consistent for both the basic on the top and the complex emotions down the bottom. So do you take a pill to make your headache go away? Or maybe you take anti-inflammatories so that you can run through an injury. Or you eat food that you know isn't that great for you when you're feeling down. And in the short term, this can make you feel better, but really you're just telling your body to shut up. If you keep pushing and ignoring what your body tells you, it will keep giving you louder and louder signals. Where you don't want to end up is in a position where you are forced to listen by suffering severe illness or major injury instead of doing what it is you love. Fixing problems is much harder than preventing them in the first place. Emotions are neither good or bad, but a healthy part of our life. And the emotions that we experience through the events in our life help us shape how we see the world. We often get conditioned that anger, frustration, and sadness are negative, and they can be if they start to harm yourself and harm others around you. However, when they first present, they're often not harmful. And at this time, it's important that we acknowledge them and express them before they escalate to a point where they cause harm. It can be challenging, but through this discomfort comes growth. So have you ever held your tongue to keep the peace in an effort but manifested this really crazy stressful scenario in your head of how this other person's going to react, only to find a waste of energy? Or in your effort to stay composed with all the underlying stress, you end up having a meltdown in one of the most inappropriate places of all. And this is often because you've allowed the emotions to build up and suppress them so that you can get on with your day. But your body will only cope to a certain point. Next time you start to feel dread at work or stress when you've been talking to a loved one, stop and think about the situation you've just been in and where you feel this in your body. And is there anything that you can do to change it? I once treated a lady who had experienced 7 years of coccyx pain. This is the little bone that sits at the bottom of your tailbone. She had 3 years of physical therapy, including internal work, and then she eventually had it surgically removed in an effort to relieve her pain, but nothing changed. She couldn't sit for more than a few minutes at a time. She couldn't lay on her back to sleep, and she felt it all the time. She had given up. So she asked me what I do, and I told her I was an osteopath, so I treat the body. But what I'm really interested about is how our emotions affect how we feel. And I like to try and pop these bubbles where you hold that tension and elicit change. She said that she wanted to come and see me. I told her that it can be a pretty full-on experience to start, but if you get through the initial discomfort, which is largely emotional, so much more than physical pain can change. So she shared her story, and 7 years prior she broke her coccyx during childbirth. But what was more interesting to me was the story of what was happening in her life at the time. She was brought up in a family with a very strong belief system. She was in an arranged marriage from a young age. Her husband was cheating on her while she was pregnant, and he left her soon after she had their baby. On top of that, she felt like her mother was close to disowning her because of what had just happened. She had a daughter who was unmarried and had a child. And a lot of our emotions around personal and family relationships get stored in the hips and pelvis. Her values had changed and were in conflict with that of her family. She didn't feel supported at all. She was living a life to appease her family and not one in line with her values, one of them being to marry for love, not for status. She was holding on to an incredible amount of tension in her body. And when she talked about this past and her current situation, her body reacted by tightening up, and especially around her hips. It was her reactions to her emotions that were causing her discomfort. She also had the opportunity to acknowledge that she had been through so much and how it was affecting her body. Her openness and desire to change made the process much easier for me and the results quicker for her. And within 8 sessions, her discomfort completely resolved. And she has since chosen to leave behind the strict belief system that she was brought up with and has found happiness, and her body feels this. So how do we find balance? Your body is constantly seeking balance. In ancient medicine, Ayurveda refers to it as balancing the 3 doshas, Kapha, Pitta and Vata. Chinese medicine calls it yin and yang, and in a more modern sense we can call it feminine and masculine energies. Emma touched on the more scientific explanation of these opposites, which is the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, or the handbrake and accelerator. So finding balance often involves remembering why you do what you do. And in the midst of all the stress, sometimes we can forget what we're actually trying to achieve. So give yourself permission to slow down, experience and express emotions as they come and as they go. Coming back to your breath can be one of the simplest ways to help you deal with difficult emotions. And be aware of what your body is trying to tell you without the need to intellectualise it. It's intelligent and knows what to do if you allow it. And don't be afraid of change. When I was putting all of this together, I found a really great quote that summarised everything quite nicely. It can be a huge wake-up call when you go through tremendous suffering. Crisis is an opportunity to reassess and be connected to what your values, and to be more assertive about what you really need and want. To comfort those experiencing hardship, simply be there as a witness. Do not try to change anything, but acknowledge that the other person's feelings. Acknowledgement is the key to healing. So to make a small change and have a big impact, I want you to think about the one thing that you love to do, that you used to always make time for, something that makes you smile. And make a commitment that in the next week that you will make an effort to make time to do this for yourself. Thank you.